Basically, my parents said that stay out of jail because basically there's no safety net. If you're in jail, you do something foolish and that's it. And I think that having been refugees, there's in the back of their mind, they're always afraid that if they did something bad, that will be kicked out of the country. So there's always that fear there, right? Because of what happened. It's very traumatic to leave your country. But we also knew that, the only way out of poverty is education. That is it. My father worked in a factory for about 3 decades just to support his 11 children. And basically they said that, if you don't want to end up like your dad in a factory, you better study hard, stay out of trouble, work hard, obey your parents, and achieve to get out of poverty, to get where you need to go. But at some point, and this comes with maturity, we need to shift gear into recognizing there's more for us in this world than achievement.
Well, welcome to another episode of Up Next. Today, I get a chance to speak for the first time with the newest friend, Dr. Vinh Chung. Vinh, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Tommy.
As we're sitting here, where's home for you right now? Where's your office located right now, Vinh?
It's in Colorado Springs. So I'm looking at the mountains right now. It's beautiful here.
Look, I was just talking with your wife earlier this week, and she was telling me, Colorado, you get some cold weather, but it's for the most part, it's pretty warm out there. How do you like Colorado compared to all the other places that you've lived in the past?
It's the best place in the world. I've lived in other places. Nothing compares. Every single day, you look at the mountains and it humbles you. It grounds you. It reminds you how small you are in this world. And I think that's just one of the greatest gifts, is to be reminded of how small we are.
Yeah, we've looked at it. You're with Mohs Surgeon. What kind of medical practice do you focus on here?
So I'm a Mohs surgeon, which means that I specialize in diagnosing and treating skin cancers. I do mostly surgery. So you grow skin cancer, I cut it out, and I patch it up. We also have plastic surgeons in our practice, so they also help me with the reconstruction. So we also have general dermatologists, pathologists as well.
Yeah. And how long have you been overseeing this practice? Because I know both you and your wife work together. How long have you had this practice?
Yeah, so we have been here since 2009. My goal wasn't to open a practice. The reason that we opened the practice was because I failed to find a job. And at that point, I have 2 kids and a medical school debt. So my wife helped me out by giving me my first job.
Wonderful. Hey, talk to me. You have a unique history. I'm sitting here looking at your LinkedIn profile, even talking with your wife. You have a unique history. Talk to me a little bit about childhood, living in Vietnam, and how you got here to the States.
Sure. So in April of 1975, Saigon fell and the U.S. Pulled out of Vietnam. My mother was pregnant with me. So I was born 8 months later. And when I was 3.5 years old in 1979, my family left Vietnam as refugees. So we were in a boat. My parents had packed up their 8 children, and we left by boat. We eventually ended up in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So that's how I grew up here.
Yeah. And World Vision, from what I read, did World Vision rescue you guys when you guys were on the boat?
Yes, it sure did. So World Vision is the largest Christian humanitarian organization in the world right now. It was much smaller back then, and back then they weren't involved in helping refugees. But with refugees pouring out of Vietnam in the late 70s, the president of World Vision, Stan Mooneyham, felt they had to do something about it. So they got a boat, went overseas to try to assist refugees. And when they found our family drifting in the boat, packed with 93 people, they felt that they had to pick us up. They couldn't just give us food and water and send us on our way because our boat wasn't functional. So they picked us up, and we were eventually, and then we were relocated to the refugee camp in Singapore.
Yeah. Vin, were you old enough to remember that time on the boat? 93 people, you and your siblings, all of that. Do you remember any of that?
So fortunately, I don't remember most of it. I remember the taste of salt water. I remember some emotions, but all the details that happened, I thank God that I was so young I could remember.
Yeah. And then in the early days, going to Arkansas, being at refugee camp, How did you move from there? What were some of the lessons that you learned? And here you are. Then you went to Harvard for your bachelor's.
Yeah, so my journey has been the result of divine intervention through generous, courageous people all along the way, from World Vision to the small Lutheran church in Fort Smith, Arkansas, who knew nothing about Vietnamese people, but they decided
Yeah.
to welcome us anyways. So that's what happened. And then throughout my childhood, growing up, I had coaches, teachers, and neighbors who all poured into me. And that's just been my life, one act of generosity to the next.
Yeah. So now here you are. You're a very successful doctor. You look back at those. How did those years, watching all these people who probably didn't know you and all that stuff, help you? How did that shape you who you are? And how does that lead you to what you tell your kids about how you grew up?
Yeah, I think that being a refugee in America, growing up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, it helped me to understand what it means when you hear the phrase in the world, but not of the world. And so, on one hand,
Mm,
I never felt that I ever belonged anywhere. But fortunately, through my faith, I feel that my greatest identity is beyond my place of birth and what I look like. And so that helps me to understand that. I think that growing up poor, your greatest driver is to study hard and then work hard so that you can escape poverty. Uh,
yeah.
and it's all based upon what I can do, my own source of competency. But now that we run a very successful practice, I've been blessed with more than I need. I found that I'm coming full circle to where I find my own sense of personal fulfillment by going back to serve people who are in need.
Yeah. 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 As much as everyone helped you, there's probably a part of you that had to work really hard. You didn't know English and all this stuff. Did your parents really push you to be a doctor? Like growing up, did they say, okay, this is what you have to do? You're going to have to be an engineer. You're going to have to get to Harvard. What was it like working with your parents and how did they push you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, basically, my parents said that stay out of jail because basically there's no safety net. If you're in jail, you do something foolish and that's it. And I think that having been refugees, there's in the back of their mind, they're always afraid that if they did something bad, that will be kicked out of the country. So there's always that fear there, right? Because of what happened. It's very traumatic to leave your country. But we also knew that the only way out of poverty is education. That is it. My father worked in a factory for about 3 decades just to support his 11 children. And basically, they said that, if you don't want to end up like your dad in a factory, you better study hard. And so that was a big motivator to study hard.
Yeah, yeah. Been similar to you. A lot of times, my parents immigrated here in 72. I was born in 77 in Chicago. My dad worked as a cook. My mom worked as a teacher aide at the school. We didn't really have a lot of food. We didn't have a lot of money, but for them, education was always the key. Now, sometimes my mom took it a little too far. It was, you had to have straight A's, perfect attendance. There was no, A is just average. You exceed and excel all the time. B, don't even think about it. And so a lot of times, but education was up, but it was the hard work ethic, Vin, that I
Yes.
learned to this day from my parents. They never complained. They just kept working to really be able to take care of the family.
Yes. And I think that it is effective for that time, but it's not sufficient. And I think the problem is that people are so stuck in that mindset. And I think that now that we hit our career stages, we need something more than just achievement. And so that's been a long journey for me. And that's part of why I have re-engaged with World Vision, so an organization that rescued my family through the work that they do internationally. And that's how we're able to find meaning and joy in what we do. And so at that time, it's very simplistic. Stay out of trouble, work hard, obey your parents, and achieve to get out of poverty, to get where you need to go. But at some point, and this comes with maturity, we need to shift gear into recognizing there's more for us in this world than achievement.
All right. I love what you just said. When did you start realizing that? At what point? Was it
Yes.
because of something happened? Did you
Yeah,
start getting a couple years ago and said, wow, I've made so much money. Things are going so well. My life was, what was the turning point?
sure. So I think, again, going back to that, those are survival strategies because you don't do that, you don't survive, right? But there's more to life than just surviving. It's thriving, right? It's living life in all its fullness. And I think that for me, it started after we opened our practice. So all of a sudden, we started making money. Never had that before, and so I was in my early to
Mhm.
mid 30s. So finally, our practice was doing well. We did well, and so we wrote a check to donate to World Vision. And at that point, it was just more of an obligation, like a tithe. And so we supported projects there. But in my mind, I was still just going to work hard so that I could write a bigger check. I could work hard so I could write a bigger check. Because at that point, my understanding of myself was that I am only as good as what I can produce. I'm only as good as what I can achieve. And it wasn't until we went to a project in Cambodia, and the project that we're sponsoring was rescuing girls who have been sex trafficked. And when I went there, I was broken. My heart was broken. I was crushed because I encountered evil for the very first time as an adult. When I saw what happened to these children, when I began to understand how big this problem is, I recognized that I cannot outwork it. I cannot outdo it. I can outsmart it. And so I think that was when I surrendered and recognized that I can't do it myself. It's not a paycheck that's going to fix this problem. This problem exists at a much deeper level that I need to engage with. And so I think that's when we came back and we were humbled and we decided to just bring our friends along. And then we decided to engage more, counteracting these problems at a higher level, at the spiritual level. And so
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was a
yeah,
big
yeah, yeah.
transition.
And now this change from what you saw, how does this change how you work, how you lead, how you build your practice, how you take care of how you educate your kids? How has that changed for you as a leader?
Yeah, I think that it's a gift. It's one of the greatest gifts in the world to have my heart broken. I think about Henry David Thoreau, who wrote that the masses of men live in quiet desperation. And I believe that desperation exists not only for the average person, but even for very successful people, even among CEOs. There's a quiet desperation. Why is that? The quiet desperation is that it's like you're playing this game, you don't see any meaning in it, but you continue to play it because you don't know a way out. You don't know that you don't know that there is another game to play. And so for me and my wife, how it changes as a leader. So first, how I lead my family is that growing up, I was very poor. My wife, same thing as immigrant, but now we have children who live very comfortably, and our fear is that they would end up with lives of quiet desperation as well. That's the average. That's what happens in this country when you don't see that there's anything beyond security and comfort and achievement. So it changes us because then we then engage our children, exposing them to poverty, let them care about other people across the world so that their hearts can be broken. And so we've been successful at that with some of our children because I think
Hmm.
that until
Hmm.
your heart's broken, you're not going to surrender and you're not going to be able to find meaning and purpose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and a lot of times, even talking with your wife, she was telling me that in the midst of all those trips, your son has really become quite the speaker, just advocating for some of these things, and the rest of your kids. And so, watching, there's nothing more joyful. You could do it, your wife could do it, but seeing now your kids doing it and coming in their own.
That's right. And so when I think about how do we define success, success is when we lead our children to the point that their hearts are broken so they can find meaning and purpose in this life and that they can take a life of their own. Because until then, we're just trying to pave the road for them with security and comfort.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Vin, I think a lot of times we have all these different young leaders, whether it's from Indonesia, Malaysia, Cape Town, Johannesburg, South Africa, all of the Nairobi, as they're listening to you, like how did you have to overcome some of the hardest thing? Like Harvard probably wasn't easy, and you probably had to struggle with the English language and all of that stuff. There's perseverance and all of that. What are tips that would you give to some of these young people as they're struggling through life?
That's a great question. I think that struggling with something that requires competence and hard work, that's actually pretty easy. You
Hmm.
just work hard. But I think that struggling with having a sense of belonging, love, respect, that's a lot harder. Struggling with meaning and purpose is a lot harder because I feel that as human beings, we can achieve and accomplish and acquire all of our physical needs: food, water, shelter, house, cars. You want 5 cars, you can achieve. You want 10 cars, you can achieve that. But but to be able to experience love, You can't achieve that. That doesn't come from achievement. It comes through relationships that where love is given to you. And so I can't earn my wife's love. I can only engage in her through a relationship where she gives me her love freely and voluntarily. Same thing with trust. I can't force my wife to trust me. I can't force my children to trust me, but only through relationships with them could I have the trust that they give. So I think that's the biggest dilemma of high achievers and business leaders is
Yeah.
that you can't achieve that.
And Vin, one of the things I've had to learn also is I had to understand what my true motivation, what drives me. Am I doing it just to please parents? Am I doing it just to please people so they could say good things about me?
Yes.
What is the ulterior motives? Like, for instance, I was just telling your wife as well too. Sometimes I feel guilty that if I'm not working, which my parents were always showing, I feel guilty. And I have to sit there and say, why do I feel guilty when I'm not working? What is driving me to achieve some of those
Yeah.
things?
Yeah. Well, I think that's why there's a Sabbath. I think that 1 out of 7 days, you just do nothing. You do nothing that is productive. Again, it cannot generate productivity. You do it by resting, you play, you engage with your family. I think that's critical to have that habit. So if I were to pick one is that, I think that people who live in quiet desperation end up there not by choice. They end up there out of neglect of their own family, their relationships, and their personal health. One day you're going to wake up and you find out you have been taking care of your body, and it's through neglect. No one chooses that, right? And so we have to be very intentional about that. Achievement is great. It's easy because it's always pressing, it's always urgent, it's measurable, it's tangible. So it's very addictive. But the other parts that make us human, such as relationships and love, respect, belonging, our family, is not as urgent, but is as important.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I love what you're saying there. I'm 48 years old now, Vin, and I've always worked hard and done work for the ministry. But now I had cancer 6 years ago. Just went in for my annual checkup. Doctor says I have high blood pressure, plaque in my heart, and also I have diabetes from the chemotherapy. So now, and then if you look at my eyes, it's drooping because the chemo radiation affected my eyes because I neglected taking care of my body. So now I got to cut the rice, the white rice. I got to cut the red meat and do all these things because I was neglecting it for so long.
Yeah, yeah. So we got to take care of our physical body as well, right? Beyond our work and our achievement. And so we need to make sure that we rest, make sure that we worship, and make sure and it's really we need to invest in our future self, right?
Yeah. One thing, look, I mean, as I sit here and talk with you, it seems like everything is going well and all this stuff, but was there a lesson as you started your business, as you launched your business, a lesson, a mistake, a lesson learned that you had to make that really shaped how you led as a leader?
Yes. Yes. So first of all, let me say that I was a horrible leader when we first opened the business because I thought that all I needed was to be the smartest guy, the hardest working guy, and that'll be it. So when I first started my work out in private practice, I had finished 15 years of training to become a skin cancer surgeon or a Mohs surgeon. And I thought that I knew everything there was to know, but I knew nothing about leadership. I was a horrible leader. Why? Because I didn't focus on leading people. I just focused on my own personal ability and competency. But practice of medicine, just like anything you do in the world, is a team sport. And so I needed to have my medical assistants, my histotech, all of my staff members to believe in why we're doing what we're doing. And so in order for that to happen, I have to become a leader worth following. And so that took me several years to understand that. I struggle with it. And now I love it. I love leading my team almost as much as the work that I do as a surgeon.
Yeah. When you say you struggled with it for so many years, one of the key things I learned is it does take time for those who are listening to be a good leader. It takes time. But then also, how did you go about doing it? Is it learning from mistakes? Is it talking with people? Is it being mentored?
So all of the above. I read a lot of books. I listened to podcasts. And then later on, when you start reading all these books and podcasts, you realize none of this is original data. It's just really all words of wisdom from Proverbs, from the Bible, from other religious texts to explain how do we treat one another, people. That's really it. It's how do you treat one another? And how do you treat one another in a way where they would voluntarily do it instead of coercion?
Yeah.
That's a secret.
Well, then going with the secret as a follow up, what is the way you treat people? What did you find out is the way that you treated people? You're like paid employees. You can keep giving them money. Oh, you don't like it? Here's more money. But that doesn't help long term.
Yes. So first of all, it starts with recognizing what makes me human, what makes them human, right? Working with a scalpel is easy. I know exactly how the scalpel is going to behave. That's very, very easy. I could buy equipment, I could buy space, I could do all that, but human beings are different. So it starts with who are they? Who are these people? What are their needs? So they have psychosocial needs that need to be treated with respect, love, and belonging beyond the paycheck, right? Paychecks could buy all of their physiological needs, but they also need love, respect, and belonging. And then they're also spiritual animals or spiritual beings, so they need to believe in a higher purpose, which is why is it that we're doing what we're doing? Well, we're doing what we're doing because we want to save lives. We're doing what we're doing because my patients have been made in the image of God, and so we need to treat them with dignity and respect. It's more than just a job; it's a calling. And so you need to integrate all of those three broad components of what makes us a human being. So in many ways, you bring the humanity back. First of all, in myself and how I do it, bring the humanity back into my staff members, and then that into the patients as well. And
Mm,
when you think about the word integrity, that's what it is. Integrity is who you are when no one is watching. It's not just what you do, but it's who are you and why do you exist. So when what you do aligns with who you are and why you exist, you have a calling, you don't have a job. And so that's what I want for myself. That's what I want for my staff members. So it's more of an integration of the full humanity into who we are as we interact with one another and engage. So you got to bring that all together
yeah,
and
yeah,
do it
yeah.
consistently.
Okay, it goes back to a conversation that I'm listening to. It goes back to my conversation with your wife. She says, when you talk to my husband, you're going to realize he's the far superior speaker.
Ha!
So as I'm listening to you, you're able to dialogue and you're being able to explain all of these things in a wonderful way. Then who taught you how? Here you are. A lot of times, it's not probably you didn't attend a lot of public speaking classes and all that stuff, but you also have a thoughtful process where you're able to reflect. Who taught you how to think critically, reflect, but also be able to explain all these things?
So, I grew up not understanding English. I remember vividly struggling in elementary school because I didn't understand English. The teachers would sit around and read a book. Kids would laugh. I knew nothing that was going on. That's been one of the greatest gifts to me, is to know what it's like not to know. That is
Mm,
how I'm able to explain to the patient because I can read their face and I can tell if they understand what's going on or not. So when I explain to them a cancer, what I need to do, I can read their face and connect with them at that level. So that's the first thing. Greatest gift to
wonderful, wonderful.
know what it's like not to know. I think I've self-diagnosed myself as ADHD. In college, I skip all of my classes. I skip everything. I read. I open up a book. I fall asleep, and so I just have to use a different part of my brain to be able to make sense of the world. And then what I'm explaining here is the integration of what makes us human. And so, what makes us human is beyond what I read in my medical school book, beyond biochemistry, beyond physics, beyond chemistry, but it is also sociology, right? It's psychology, it's also politics, it's history, because these are all how we treat one another, right? And at the highest level is also theology, art, and Bible. And so, that's the full understanding and experience of what it means to be truly and fully human. And as I think about leadership, we're not leading things. We're not leading cogs in the wheel. They're not things, they're people. And there's simple ways to get people to do things. You pay them more, right? Or you threaten them with penalties if they don't do what you want them to do. And you'll get immediate actions. Why is it so common that people use force and coercion? It's because it's effective. It is very effective immediately, but it's not long lasting.
Hmm.
And what I've learned is that if you have people in a point where they engage voluntarily, you will get more out of them. So the long term goal would be achieved. Like they become more than if they were just to do something by force. And here's the other beautiful thing I never understood till much later on is that they become better over time. And so as I become a better leader, a leader who is worth following, people voluntarily choose to do things with me, not because I tell them to, but they choose to do it with me, they become better as well. So the capacity of my team now compared to 10 or 15 years ago is night and day. There's no comparison. It's because all of my teammates understand not only what they do, they understand who they are, who I am, and why we're doing what we're doing. And so it's a dynamic living process, just like a tree that blooms and bears fruit and pass on to the next generation. So it's beautiful to see as well that we have leaders now who started out straight from college, but now they're leading other people. So work is not just something you do so that you can live with your life. Work is how you choose to spend your life. And work in itself takes a life of it on its own. That's when it's beautiful, when you
Yeah,
create.
yeah,
You
yeah.
create. Yeah. So it's not just what you do, it's how to create.
And I do wonder if many of the lessons that you learned started from your early days where you came in over as a refugee. You didn't know any English. You had to work yourself out. No one probably gave you the time of day, but people helped you to get to where you are. So you
Yes.
started at the
Yes.
bottom and you had to prove yourself and make yourself worthy for people to pay attention. Like, for instance, as a young immigrant, I grew up in a neighborhood where I was one of 5 Asians. And in all the jobs I always started at the bottom. And I had to learn and work myself up, but alongside ask myself, wait, how did that boss treat me? What did I not like or like about the boss? How would I do if I was in that role? And by asking those questions over a period of 25 years, laid the foundation for how I led in the future.
That's right. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It doesn't happen overnight. And it takes time, but it takes intentionality. And again, I feel that if I hadn't made the decision to become a leader worth following, would still be I would still live a comfortable life. I could still
Yeah,
do good
yeah.
work as a doctor, but I'll be frustrated and I will not be able to find the joy that I have today in
Hmm,
terms of
hmm.
investing. So there's a Vietnamese proverb that says, when you eat the fruit, remember who planted the tree. So you think about that. On one level, that's just obligation to express gratitude. But I feel that if that becomes a discipline where you express gratitude, it actually gives yourself personal joy to be able to continue to plant trees. So I see myself now in a season of planting trees and investing in next
Yeah,
generation.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So
that gives you so
plant,
much more joy.
and I hear you're doing it for your kids. You're doing it for World Vision. Have you been back to Vietnam since leaving?
I have. So I went back there last year, and I'm actually going to go in Christmas again. So we'll be visiting some World Vision projects there that would hope to engage in and then to support. I'll be going to Vietnam next week, December 25th.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And for you, a lot of times, is it building into the leaders, building into the churches there, or is it the small businesses? What does it mean to build into for you? What does that mean?
Yeah, great question. I think it's giving life. I think that when I have to summarize everything, it's personal transformation and giving life, or to bring about life. And that's how I can experience life in all its fullness. And again, go back to what I said before. In order to survive, I must achieve. I must achieve. I must achieve. Through relationships, I receive. I receive love. I receive belonging. For meaning and purpose, I must give. I must give, and it bears fruit, and that's how I find meaning. And that's the fullness of life, right? The fullness of life is such that you can experience that today as a human being because you are a physiological animals. You have needs that must be met. You're also a psychosocial animals. We're not meant to live alone. All the studies that we know, theologically, psychologically, shows that we're supposed to live in community. That's undeniable. And then we're also spiritual, moral beings. We must become part of or to have in our life that which is good, beautiful, and true. And that's through an act of giving. So achieve or acquire, right? And give. Ultimately, you need to have all three of that in your life. And so when I think about the image of the tree that we eat, right? When we remember who planted the tree, over time, we will find joy in planting trees ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, very good. So when I'm sitting here at home on Christmas Day, I would think of you and your family flying over, celebrating Christmas on the plane, probably United Airlines or American Airlines.
That's right. Yes. Thank you very much. I think it's United. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for you, as we're beginning to wrap up as well too, is what's next? I mean, you're going to continue working your job and all that stuff. What is your hope for you in this next aspect, in this next chapter in your life? Do you want to do more teaching, speaking? Do you want to do more mentoring, building into what is that passion on your heart?
I feel that right now our world has been crippled by fear. Fear leads to cynicism, and apathy leads to a life of quiet desperation. I want to sow courage. I want to live a life of courage. And I would like to encourage others to come along and do that. And I believe that the way out is through engaging with one another and through giving. And giving is not just money, but it's giving our gifts,
Mm-hmm.
it's giving our life stories with others. I think that we're so afraid to engage with other people that we remain isolated. And I think that we're meant to live in community. And
Mm,
so, I'm a doctor. I will still be cutting out cancers every day. That's my job. That's what I get paid for. But this next stage in my life, I would like to engage more with people to see how we could bring courage to the world. And I think that's how we could redeem it.
yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for everything. Thank you for just your journey. Thank you for just allowing me into your life a little bit. And I am sure this will be the first of many conversations that we have. So I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Tommy.